Shalom, everybody. How are you today? Today is Monday, August the 10th. Very, very happy that you joined me today for Pirkei Avot. If you're in the United States on the East Coast, it's about 1:30, I think, in the afternoon. Here in Israel, it's 8:30 at night. So again, thank you so much for being here with me for Pirkei Avot. Like I like to say in my advertising sometimes, if it's Monday night or Monday, it must be Pirkei Avot time, Ethics of the Fathers. Today's lesson, today's shiur, is dedicated by an old friend from the Providence Hebrew Day School when we were there together, as was my sister Susan, together at that time. His name is Elliot Friedstein. Elliot Friedstein. He lives in Groton, Connecticut. And he said, if you would ever like to dedicate any of your lessons, I'm thinking of my loving grandparents. So Elliot Friedstein of Groton, Connecticut, would like to dedicate today's shiur, today's lesson, to the loving memory of his dear and devoted grandparents. They are Philip and Estelle Kittay. Philip and Estelle Kittay. Philip's Yortzeit, the anniversary of his passing, was on the 9th of Av. He passed away in 1968. That was about a week and a half ago, the 9th of Av. And Estelle passed away on the 10th of Av in 1991. So both of them died several years apart, but their Yortzeit is within a day of each other in the Jewish calendar. And that was about a week and a half ago. So he wrote to me that Grandma Estelle's father studied all the time, and he must have known Pirkei Avot very well. So I'm very happy to hear that, and very happy to dedicate today's lesson, today's shiur, to the memory of Elliot's dear and devoted grandparents, Philip and Estelle Kittay. So let's dive into Pirkei Avot. Let's do that. Again, thank you so much for being here and for joining me today. This is a chapter 2, Mishnah or teaching number 11. And here's what it says. It's very, very brief, but boy, does it pack a wallop. Okay? So again, chapter 2, Mishnah or teaching number 11. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer. Rabbi Yehoshua says or teaches. Here's what he teaches. Ayin hara, a stingy or jealous eye. Ayin hara. We talked about this a few weeks ago. The Yetzer hara, and giving in to the temptations of the sinful inclinations, giving in to what we call the evil inclination, and v'sinat habriot, hating, despising humankind. All these three things. If you have a stingy or a jealous eye, if you give in often to the temptations of sinful inclinations, and if you hate people for no reason, v'sinat habriot, you hate people for no reason, you hate humankind for no reason, then motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. All of these three types of behaviors remove or drive a person out of the world. They drive a person out of the world. So this kind of has to be dissected. What exactly does Rabbi Yehoshua mean? And what really caught my attention was, what does that mean, that these three traits or characteristics, they drive a person out of this world? What does that mean? If the person has all those three characteristics, there's like this big vacuum hose, and what just sucks them into a big bag and off they go? That's a little hard to believe. So what does that mean? So first of all, we need to see that this connects to a previous Mishnah that we learned a few weeks ago, where a great rabbi named Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says to his 5 top students to go out of the study hall and seek the finest personality trait to emulate. What is the best way to be in the world? He says to his 5 top students. One of the 5 top students says the best way to be, the best character trait, the best personality type to have is an ayin tova. Ayin tova. To have a good eye, a good eye. Okay? Do any of you remember this from a couple of weeks ago? Remember I said good eye sounds like you're in Australia. Good eye, mate. You got a good eye. But it means a good eye. What does it mean to have a good eye? It means you're generous, you're kind. You see just the best in people and situations. One of the students said the best thing to have is a good eye, so that everything you look at with cheer and with joy and with happiness, because in a sense, for you, everything is great. It's all wonderful. Okay? So after that, the same Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai told his students, after they each gave their 5 responses, he says, now go out and see what is the worst personality trait to have. What is the worst characteristic to have? And this same student said, ayin hara, ayin ra'ah. Well, if the best trait is to have an ayin tov, a good eye, good, generous, uh, you see everything quite rosy and joyous and with great pleasure, the opposite of that would be true. What's the worst character trait? To have a bad eye, ayin ra'ah. To have a jealous or a stingy eye is, according to Rabbi Yoshua, the worst kind of a personality trait you can have. So here, just a few teachings later, it picks up on this idea of how destructive an ayin ra'ah, a stingy or jealous eye, can be. So we have a couple of questions before we delve into the meat of this lesson. What is an ayin hara? What does it really mean? What does it mean to give in to the temptations of sinful inclinations? What does that mean? What does it mean that somebody hates humankind for no reason? What does that mean? And for me, the big question is, what does it mean that when you put all these 3 things together in the same individual, that these 3 character traits will drive a person out of the world? That really needs a lot of explanation. So first, a word from our sponsor. Who's our sponsor? Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania. He's the one that taught this lesson. We just want to know a couple of things about him. First of all, as I mentioned, he was one of the 5 top students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It was said about him that he was brought as a baby to the study hall to hear words of Torah, so that as he grows and matures, the words will become familiar to him. They will have a ring of familiarity. And that was the great idea of bringing him in. Even if he didn't understand anything, what could you understand at the age of 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years in a study hall, a Jewish study hall? You're going to get zero. Just suck on your pacifier and have a good time doing whatever you need to do in your diaper. But more than that, he was brought in so that as he grows older, it'll sound familiar. It'll have a familiar hum. He was a Levite. Which means he wore dungarees. That's not what it means at all. He was a Levite. He sang in the Holy Temple choir. He earned his living as a blacksmith. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania was one of the 2 primary teachers of Rabbi Akiva. Not shabby. One of the 2 primary teachers of the sainted, huge, great, unbelievable Rabbi Akiva. So that's a pretty good connection. So here he emphasizes how one should have positive feelings for other people, and the best way to do that is by staying away from jealousy and staying away from hatred. So let's talk for a moment about ayin hara. What does it mean to have an evil eye, to have a bad eye? It means that somebody is constantly envious. And when you're always envious, you just don't have a peace of mind. If you remember the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. What does it mean to covet? It means many things, but the essence of it is don't envy. Don't envy other people. And again, it's a never-ending cycle of envy and jealousy. An evil eye will begrudge the success of others. You don't like other people to be successful. An evil eye makes you think that you, whoever you are more deserving of honor and success than other people. You deserve it. How come they got it? And, this kind of a feeling ultimately leads to a downfall of a person. If you remember Haman from the story, Haman from the Purim Megillah, the Megillah of Esther, Haman has a banquet with the king and the queen of Persia. He has a banquet with the 2 top officials. And when he goes home from the banquet, his wife says, no, so how was it? Okay. And he says, it was very nice. There I was with the top the king and the queen of Persia. And he said, I could not feel great about that. I could not feel the honor and the privilege of that. Why? Because that wicked Mordecai refuses to bow down to me. Here is Haman. Haman is jealous. Haman is angry that somebody doesn't bow down to him. Uh, do you think that's a problem, Haman? So what? So what? You just had a banquet with the two top officials of your country. I would love that. I think if I had that in Israel, I would forget a lot of other things that bother or nick me. I would forget it. But so this led to Haman's downfall. If you remember in the Megillah story, Purim, Haman gets hanged. So that's not a good ending. You may remember a few weeks ago when we were talking in our lesson about 5 Derech Eretz lessons in the Torah portion, we talked about a gentleman named Korach. Korach, a cousin to Moses and Aaron and Miriam. And what happened to Korach? He wanted leadership. He felt slighted. He didn't get it. What was his outcome? Right into the earth. The earth splits, takes Korach and his 250 berry men, and he dies. He dies. Haman, Korach, die. They leave this world because of their rampant jealousy and envy. Envious people don't concentrate on what they have. Rather, they concentrate on what they lack. And psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, all people in the health field will tell you that when you get to that point where all you can focus on is what you don't have and you don't have enough appreciation for what you do have, this will poison your entire experience of life. Just that ayin hara. You'll become insatiable because you're always looking around who's getting more than you, who has more than you. And that's going to make you nuts. A great commentator named Rabbeinu Yonah, he said that ayin hara is like a cancerous leprosy. It implants within you insatiable desires, and it becomes all-consuming. You can hardly think of anything else. You're all consumed by jealousy and envy and things of that nature. Rambam Maimonides says, ayin hara, what does it mean, an evil eye or a bad eye? It means that you're stingy. Others don't deserve more. You're miserly. You're very tight-fisted. Somebody was once called to donate to a Jewish cause, and they said to him, sir, are you charitable? Can we ask you for some money? He says, yes, I'm very, very charitable. As a matter of fact, when it comes to charity, I stop at nothing. And you know, they checked his records, and he was absolutely right. He stops at nothing. He gave nothing. He stopped at nothing. So Maimonides said it's a kind of a stinginess. It's a miserliness, tight-fisted. The Chazon Ish, another great commentator, he says you can give people and what they have in ayin hara. This is very interesting. The way you look at people or their possessions or what they have or how they live, the Chazon Ish says one of the mysteries of creation is the ability, listen to this, the ability of someone by means of their intellect to unleash hidden forces in everyday existence. Can you believe that? Just by the thought process. You can give an ayin hara, an evil eye, to people, to their jobs, to their possessions, if you become insatiably envious of it. Now, you and I would say, what's one thing got to do with the other? If I'm jealous, I give somebody an ayin hara, I can affect their livelihood, etc. You know, I didn't say it. This is not me. This is the Chazon Ish, who was one of the great thinkers and philosophers of the Jewish people. So this is his take on why ayin hara is so terrible. By the way, you may have heard of kind of like a Jewish, not really a ritual item, a Jewish item called the chamsa. Did you ever hear of that? Chamsa. It looks like a hand. Okay, there it goes. It looks like you get it here and in many Jewish stores, Judaica shops. It looks like a hand. Okay, chamsa comes from the word chamesh, five fingers. And in the middle of the chamsa, there is an eye. In most chamsas, there's an eye. And the idea of it is to display it so that your hand will halt the evil eye. Your hand will hold back the evil eye. 3 floors down from us in our building, by the way, right outside their door, there's a display of about 15 different chamsas. Now, does it really work that way? Does it really help? I don't know what to tell you. I'm just saying that a lot of people have it. A lot of people buy it. So, last thing about this ayin hara, evil eye, stinginess, jealousy, envy. In the Talmud, it says that one of the great sages named Rav, R-A-V, he once went to a cemetery, and with his spiritual wisdom, whatever that means, he was able to determine each cause of death of the people buried in that cemetery. And in that cemetery, he found out through his whatever it is, he was able to determine that in that cemetery, 99% of those who died due to some connection with an evil eye. Jealousy, envy, other things we talked about, the evil eye, and only 1% died of other causes. So could this be one meaning of the idea that if you have this, you remove yourself from the world? Maybe. We'll talk about that more at the end. Okay, so that's the evil eye. Now let's go to the Yetzer Hara. If an individual is often or constantly giving in to the urges that the Torah does not sanction, urges of things that the Torah prohibits, giving into the temptation of a sinful inclination. So here's what the rabbis teach us. Each and every person is born with 2 hearts. But it doesn't mean 2 hearts like literal throbbing hearts. Bechol levavcha, it says in Deuteronomy chapter 6, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. Bechol levavcha. But levavcha is indicating a plural. You shall love the Lord your God with all your hearts. Well, most people have 1 heart. So what is the Torah talking about? What does God mean by that? It means to say that every individual has 2 inclinations that are deposited within them. I'm going to call them birds, chirping birds on your shoulder. You see an opportunity to do good. One bird is going to chirp and say, do it, do it, do it. It's a great mitzvah. Go ahead and do it. It's your opportunity. God brought it to you. Do it now. The other bird is going to say, don't do it. Come on, you'll have other opportunities. Other people can help this person cross the street with 9 bags. You don't have to do it. Come on. Your feet hurt. You want to get home. There are 2 inclinations that are constantly chirping away at whatever you want to say or do. And so one inclination has to overcome the other. The good inclination has to work very hard to overcome the evil inclination. Genesis 9:21 or 8:21, Genesis, it says, Ki yetzer lev ha'adam ra minu urav. It is the nature of a person from the time they are born to do ra, to do bad, to do evil. It's part of our inclination. But in order to overcome that, God has also given us the good inclination. And it's a lifetime battle between these 2 inclinations. Who's going to win at any one point of the day, any one point of the minute? Because these battles occur multiple times a day where you have to make a choice between good and bad, and hopefully we try to do the good all the time. So Maimonides, Rambam says, what does it mean, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, for people who cannot overcome the evil inclination? He says this refers to a person's lusts, and all kinds of negative desires. It induces a person to be attracted by something relatively small. Relatively small. We know that you gave up smoking years ago. And now you're having a cup of coffee, you're sitting in a cafe, and you smell the smell all around you, and all you want is one cigarette. You're on a diet, you cannot have sweets, whatever. You're sitting in a place where they have donuts, cupcakes, and all the evil inclination says, go ahead, one. Just have one. And that's how it begins. And the influence of the evil inclination increases until the person is imprisoned and ready to transgress not little things, but ready to transgress the most grave of sins. That evil inclination, that Yetzer Hara tells you, come on, it's a little thing, it's not going to hurt, it's just this time, it's not forever, who cares, nobody's looking, it's nothing. And then we find out it leads you to bigger and bigger kinds of activities that are not good for you physically, emotionally, or spiritually, or health-wise. A great commentator called the Meiri, he says a person is born with an aggressive drive toward evil, which must be tempered and harnessed and tamed. Imagine that. And he says that this Yetzer Hara, this evil inclination, has a mission no less than destroying a person's life. The sages compared it to a mosquito. Right? A mosquito. What do you do with a mosquito? You chase it away. You think it's gone. Aha! It's come right back and it wants your blood more than ever before. So Judaism teaches Torah study, prayer, appreciated personality. These can help temper the Yetzer Hara. They can help harness it, keep it at bay, keep it kind of in a little cage. But it cannot eliminate the evil inclination altogether. Now, there are teachings that say in Olam Haba, in the next world, the Yetzer Hara will be vanquished like a sword in a dinosaur. However, in this world, it's a constant battle, daily, hourly, every minute, to choose the right path when we have choices that we can make. The Yetzer Hara, this evil inclination, entices every moment of the day, making choosing the good very hard. But when we choose the good, considering the force of the evil inclination, it is infinitely rewarding to choose the good. So, Yetzer Hara, it's an appetite for things that the Torah forbids. And again, it's a constant battle. It doesn't end until our last breath. So let's take a look at the third thing, and then we'll answer the question. We'll try to answer the question, what does it mean all these things remove you from the world? In what way? What does that mean? Sinat chinam is the third thing that Rabbi Yoshua talked about. To have sinat chinam, to have hatred of people for no reason. It's baseless, baseless. Actually, the words he uses in this Mishnah, in this teaching, is sinat habriot. You hate humanity. You don't really like anybody. You're not happy with anybody. And this Mishnah teaches us that baseless hatred destroyed the second temple. That's a teaching from the Talmud. The people at the time of the second temple were basically pretty good, keeping the laws, etc. But they had baseless hatred, and that destroyed the second temple. So Rabbi Yoshua is talking about hatred of individual people, hatred of humanity as a whole. And the teaching is that hatred of any kind eats away at one's core. It saps one's life of happiness. Hatred of others leads to being hated. It leads to loneliness. It leads to depression, which can cause a premature death. Is that what it means by you'll be removed from the world? Many people say that hatred is like a cancer. God forbid. Someone who's depressed often feels that others don't care about them. They start to hate others. They start to hate themselves. They stop taking care of their needs. They live in a self-imposed isolation. Very, very careful with this hatred. So here's the bottom line. These three things, ayin hara, to be jealous, to be stingy, to be envious; yetzer hara, to be giving in easily to the evil inclination; and sinat chinam, baseless hatred, hatred of people, hatred of humanity. All of these things, says the teaching, the Mishnah, motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. They remove a person from the world. So what does that mean? Maybe you'd like to write what it means. Tonight I'm on my laptop, and because of the settings that I have, I can only see exactly 4 comments that were made, and there could be many. So I'm not sure who besides these 4. Donald Trump, thank you for listening. I can't believe it. Oprah, I'm sure you've got other things to do. This is quite amazing. Anyway, maybe you want to write as a comment your thoughts on what does it mean that these 3 things remove a person from the world. So here's a couple of thoughts, and with that we will call it a day or a night if you're living here in Israel. That these 3 things, like put together in a capsule, these 3 things working with each other, against each other, not good traits at all. An evil eye, jealous, envious, etc. Yetzer hara, giving into the evil inclination, hatreds, all kinds of hatreds. These things work together. They shame and humiliate a person's body and soul. It gives them a downward spiral that can compromise their mental health and their physical health. This is not me saying it. This is our great minds over the centuries. These are doctors, these are nurses, these are healthcare practitioners, these are psychiatrists, psychiatrists, social, everybody. Everybody will tell you when you get into this kind of a rut where you're consumed by jealousy and envy, where you're consumed by always listening to the Yetzer Hara, to the evil inclination, and doing things that are not good for you spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And when you are consumed with hatreds, these things affect your mental health and your physical health. And one commentary says they make life too disgusting for the person, and all they have is a willingness to die. One commentary compared all of these things to what does it mean to be removed from the world? It's compared to an usher removing someone from a theater. If they're constantly a nuisance, whatever they're doing in the theater, if they're constantly a nuisance, the usher will determine they are unfit for that society. Who is the society? The moviegoers, the playgoers, whoever it is. The ushers will then ask that person to leave because the way they're behaving does not mesh with the positive goals of society. These are negative traits creating negative people, and we really don't need that. So it's like an usher asking a nuisance to finally leave the theater because they don't mesh, they don't fit in. Now, could they eventually fit in? I believe so. They need a lot of work, a lot of help, a lot of empathy, a lot of sympathy. So perhaps this is what it means by when you have these 3 traits. Now, you might ask yourself, what if it's just one of the 3? Will I also figuratively or even actually be removing myself from the world? Will any one of these 3 be so bad to the person's mental health and physical health that it could kill them? I don't know. I don't know. Rabbi Yeshua spoke of these three things together in tandem. Maybe tandem is only 2. These 3 things in the threedom. Okay, that's how he taught his lesson. So I'm going to conclude by saying, what does it mean to be removed from the world? I think on a very, very simple level, it means to say that if you're this type, with these 3 very, very difficult challenges, if you're this kind of a person, you're really not living in this world. Are you living in this world? Can people see you shopping, looking at melons? They can. But up here, you have checked out. If you've got these three characteristics, you you're not living in this world anymore. You're living in another world that nobody knows about. There's a play in your mind that nobody has a seat at. In a sense, you've checked out. You've checked out because you don't see any beauty, gorgeousness, pleasures, joys in the world. And you checked out. To me, that's the meaning of it. These three things take a person out of the world. That's kind of what it means to me. You've checked out. Nothing beautiful is left for you in the world, and why be that way? Why be that way? Anyway, dear friends, I'm so glad that you were able to join today. I really appreciate it. If you have time on Wednesday, same time, 1:30 p.m. American East Coast time, 8:30 p.m. in Israel time. If you have time on Wednesday, join us for 5 Derech Eretz lessons in the Torah portion. This week it's called Re'eh. Re'eh. We're getting very close to Rosh Hashanah. Very close. And we're going to see how several of the Torah portions that we read getting close to Rosh Hashanah all have very, very profound Derech Eretz lessons, preparing us for the Day of Judgment and preparing us to shape and sharpen, buff and polish our character before the big day of judgment. Dear friends, thanks again for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Take care, be safe, be healthy, be well, and God willing, we'll see you the next time. Take care. Shalom, everybody. Bye-bye.